and welcome back. Chapter 6. How Wrong I Was. Day 11 of beachfront purgatory, and I was ready to kill my already dead body just to escape the boredom. I leaned my head on my palms as I watched the people in the office walk around. I knew I must have looked frazzled, but I was past putting up a good appearance. Other than a few nods of acknowledgement that another body was a few feet away from them when I walked in the door, that was the extent of communication. Hank picked me up every day and dropped me off at 5. I hadn't seen Harold for days. He said I had to be here for an active month, but if this was what he considered active, I might as well be laid out in a coffin. There was nothing to do. People just strolled in to the office and strolled back out. I wasn't even sure what the purpose of this place was exactly. No one seemed to do much of anything. It wasn't even a good office. My newspaper was already secondhand by the time I got to it. I knew this for sure because Murphy's sweaty hands left smudges all over the words. The catered lunch was stale, and I caught Kitty, the cat lady, double dipping her celery in the ranch dressing. Not to mention, when she brought her cats in, they tried to use my leg as a scratching post. I guess I couldn't blame them. I felt like a piece of furniture myself. I must have been putting out that vibe. Luck was there the least, if you didn't count fate. Most of the time, it looked like she'd been the one getting lucky, unless she meant for her hair to look like that and put on her shirt backwards as some sort of fashion statement. As for me, it's amazing the damage boredom can do to a personality. There wasn't a person in this office I hadn't nitpicked to death in my head. Even Bert, the leprechaun, who I never shared 2 words with. I daydream of calling in false 4-leaf clovers report just to see his green loving butt run out of the office in a tither. No wonder this place was full of jerks. It should be a secret training ground for those inclined to get postal. So, when I saw Harold step into the office that day, I was ready to tackle him to the ground harder than the biggest NFL linebacker just to get some answers. I chased him down as he walked into his office, giving him barely a foot of distance as we crossed the threshold. There was no way he was shutting this door and kicking me out. Harold, I'm cracking up here. What exactly am I supposed to be doing? All this sitting around stuff better be counting towards the 30 days since I'm here every day, willing. You're waiting. He dropped his armful of papers onto his desk. For what? I stood with my hands on my hips, blocking the door. You'll know when it's time. What am I waiting for? You'll see. Can you tell me when this thing I'm waiting for might be coming? I can't say. It's always different. No wonder the world was a mess. These people needed a course in being proactive. Be nice, I keep telling myself. Catch more bees with honey, not vinegar. Honey, honey, honey. I just didn't know how much longer I could be full honey when I was choking on acid. I wasn't naturally a sugary sweet person to begin with. I've acquired an automobile for you and the necessary documents to drive it. Harold reached into a drawer and handed me a manila envelope. The keys belonged to the white Honda Civic sitting at the curb outside. I peeked out the long rectangle office window. That? The thing had to have been 15 years old. One of the doors was primer gray in comparison to the scratch white exterior of the rest of it. Someone had just handed me a car. I should have been happy. No one had ever given me a car before. Even though I came from an upper middle class family, my parents always believed a car was something I should earn. I should be grateful. But gosh darn it, I did die to get this job. Wasn't that worth at least a used Cadillac? Or at the very least something that looked like it was going to start on a regular basis? I swallowed back the complaint and opened the envelope that contained the keys and documents. I had no idea where he gotten a photo of me for my fake license, but it didn't matter enough to bother asking. The license read Karma Walters. It sounded like a fortune teller at a carnival, but it was better than nothing. I took my envelope and headed out. At least I'd procure wills. It meant another level of freedom as the next 20 days sludged by. Call me when it happens, he says as I left. You got it. Whenever this mysterious thing that no one can explain to me happens, you'll be the first person I notify. The clock ticked 5 just as I made it back to my desk. I nodded politely at the people who didn't speak to me as I passed them on my way to the door. I fell asleep around 9 after a busy night of watching Battlestar Galactica by myself and a pizza and a cookie dough ice cream binge. I was already on the 3rd season. It's amazing how much TV you can watch when there is absolutely nothing else to do. I was tired of spending my nights alone, waiting for something that no one could explain to come. That something finally came at 6 in the morning. I woke up in a sweat, not knowing why, and then bam, a vision of a man making alterations to financial retirement accounts, draining them completely. It didn't stop there either. I saw him arguing with an older woman before killing her. The same man entered a coffee bar. The clock struck 12 as he was ordering a drink. I knew that coffee bar. And then it was gone. It had been like having a dream while I was wide awake. Was that what I'd been waiting for? A weird daydream certainly wasn't the earth-shattering event I expected to be. And seriously, were the people in the office that communication impaired that they couldn't say, hey, you're going to get a weird daydream? I got up, made some coffee, and called Harold, filling him in on the latest development. Now, you go there. And do what? How should I know? You'll find out when it's time. Honey, 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 I only had 19 days left. Deep breaths and big beehives full of honey. Are you sure I'm going to find out? I'll meet you at 11. You did know the place, correct? Yes. And then he hung up. I drank another 4 cups of coffee while I waited to leave, just to make sure I didn't lack for energy. I pulled up in front of the office at 10:59 a.m., and Harold was already waiting, staring down at his watch. You're almost late. Technically, Harold, I'm a minute early. Which is almost late. The car door made a horrible sound as he got in. One might describe it as an automobile equivalent of a death rattle. I hope the old Honda had life expectancy of another 18 days. What exactly was that I saw? I asked as I pulled out of the lot with Harold in tow and a horrible exploding sound coming from the vicinity of the Honda rear. We need to make a stop first, and then you have to go the coffee bar you saw. I turned out only onto the highway, and just when I thought I'd have to pry the rest of the details from his bony pale hands, he started to talk. You are now essentially sinking into the universe. The person you saw is someone that has been escaping balance, probably for generations. How can he have escaped for generations? He was doing it in a past life. These people get away with it for that long? Yes, for whatever reason, the universe hasn't settled his score, and now you need to. But how? He tapped the clock on the radio. In about 40 minutes, and I don't know how. Only you and the universe knows. But that's the problem, because I don't know. The universe hasn't bothered to tell me that. You'll find out when you get there. After almost 2 weeks of no answers, watching TV in solitude while I knew my parents and Charlie mourned me, having to deal with bad attitudes, and that was only if I wasn't being completely ignored, my honey well had officially run dry. All I had to offer now was vinaigrette. Bon appetit. Harold, We're treading in dangerous waters. I've got no honey left. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to hang on to the temper set off from low few explanations and far too many expectations. I don't have honey. If it's such a problem, go to the supermarket. I turned and glared at him. I'm not surprised you have no honey. His face made it clear he thought I was crazy. I didn't care. If I was starting to lose my mind, they were to blame. I pulled up to the address of a sprawling beach mansion. Before I could ask what we were there for, I knew. Fate was heading toward the car. Two things came to mind. That better not be where he lives, and he better not be coming with me. Did you need to talk to him for a minute? I asked Harold, clinging to hope. No, he's going with you. Harold ignored my scream of absolutely not and got out of the car anyway. Then he was there. I saw Hank pull up in the Mercedes behind me as Fate took Harold's spot and sat in my front seat. I didn't want him in my Honda. Neither Fate nor I said a word to each other in greeting. He finally spoke first. Do you plan on driving? I've got things to do besides babysit you. I was hoping if I ignored you, you'd get out. Wish I could. But the bottom line is, you need to learn the ropes, and I'm the best equipped to teach you. No wonder I had no honey left. I put the car in gear and my Honda engine whined slightly, as if she resented his presence as much as I did. This is my job, so don't think you're going to get all bossy on me either. Whatever, transfer. We both know you have no clue what's going on. He hand cranked up his window and turned on the air conditioner full blast, which made my old Honda wheeze like it had a pack-a-day habit. I white-knuckled the steering wheel and headed out. 18 days left. That was it. I pulled into a spot near the coffee bar after stewing over his last comment the whole ride over. If Harold didn't know, I bet he didn't either. Fine. You're right. I have no idea what we're here to do. Why don't you tell me? It's your job. I won't know until you do. If you, the so-called experienced one in charge, are clueless, yes, I'm petty, and that dig was extremely necessary to my emotional well-being. How am I supposed to know? Because this is how it works. Well, thanks for the big heads up, I shouted at his back since he was already getting out the car and heading toward the coffee shop alone. It didn't look like he was planning to wait for me, but I knew I had to do this. Active participation and all. I got out and took my time making it inside. Even if I wasn't particularly fond of him, I wasn't sure I was ready to go it alone. Not after I found out I could literally vaporize myself. Even if Fate was a bit of an ass, I didn't doubt his competence. I found a free table toward the front windows when I entered. While he was in line, I heard the girl at the register giggle flirtatiously and caught Fate smiling back equally friendly. So it was just me he instantly disliked. When he returned with 2 cups, I was actually surprised. Did he buy me a coffee? He sat across the table and I forced the words, "Thank you," out, even if it felt like chewing on sand to do it. And now, between my dislikes of him for how he treated me and the unsettling feeling I had being near him, I was watching the second hands on the clock tick away all too slowly. Now we wait. 10 to 12, 6 more revolutions it had to swing around. Neither of us bothered to make small talk. Of all the things I wanted to know, I didn't bother asking him, or he wouldn't even make it 10 minutes. Silence was the best option when it came to him. The second hand did its final turn, and I looked out the window, not expecting to really see him, the man from my vision. My breath caught as I saw the guy approaching the building. Stay calm. I didn't reply. Go to hell, you arrogant jerk. Didn't seem like a correct response, and I knew for some reason I overreacted to fate. But I couldn't think about that right now. I had a job to do. As the man from my vision got closer, more flashes popped into my head, horrible images that made my stomach turn. A picture of a hive appeared in my mind, and then a tree. Now, this might sound odd to some people, but I've always loved trees. When I notice a particular nice specimen, I always take note. So I knew this was the old oak in front of the building we were sitting in now. And just like that, I realized what I was supposed to do. But was that really it? The man entered the shop, and I watched as he got into line to order a drink. I looked at fate, having no one else to turn to, and then a strange thing happened. Fate and I had an honest moment. He touched my hand and looked at me with what seemed sincerity. The rancor that had existed between us since almost the very first meeting disappeared. Go with your gut feeling. Whatever you are seeing is the right way. I'm afraid. If you don't want it showed, you'll be okay. Just follow the visions. He broke contact then, and our small moment of truth seemed to fade the minute he pulled back. My Mark, as I decided to call him, took a coffee and sat down a few tables away. I got up and went outside. His convertible was parked under the old oak, directly under the beehive. Good thing I had jeans on. I walked to the base of the huge ancient tree. If I had a lower branch that made it perfect for climbing, and having scaled many in my youth, I was a bit of a pro. I looked around, making sure no one would see me climbing to the tree when I realized fate had followed me. He stood directly under the hive, arms folded and waiting. No one will see. How do you know? They just won't. How is that possible? Does it matter? Just do what you have to do. Would it kill him to be pleasant for more than 1 minute? I kicked off my shoes and then gripped the branch in my hands and hoisted myself up, all while muttering curses at him under my breath. The branch wasn't as strong as I hoped, and it swayed with my weight. My fingers dug into the bark until my nails hurt. My memories of climbing were a lot more fun than the current reality. I crept close to the hive, waiting for either the bees to start going crazy or the branch to break with me landing on my ass at fate's feet. What a wonderful time that would be. Well, there was always the bright side. Maybe if I fell while the bees were chasing me, he'd get stung in the process. I paused 2 feet from the hive, my fear taking over. I couldn't seem to force another step forward, but I had enough control to halt a movement backwards. They're going to attack me, I mumbled to myself. What? I looked down at where he stood safely on the ground, safe and useless. I want to drop the hive on his head. Nothing, I shouted down at him. Just do it. You just do it. Good thing he wasn't human. He'd have no friends at all if it weren't for the freaks at the office. If they were his friends, maybe they didn't like him either. I was technically a freak now too, and I certainly wasn't looking to spend time with him. I can't. You got the order. I wish I could. Order? That's what we would call in a few flashes? This business, for the lack of better name, had some serious gaps. Lots could be left to interpretation with this, but I went with the hunch. The fact that I'd be stuck with him until I got this done urged me forward. Okay, bees, just you and me, boys. I edged out further on the limb. Probably about 20 or so bees were buzzing in and out of the hive as I closed the final distance. And at some point soon, they were going to be mighty pissed off. I just want you to know, I didn't want to do this. Personally, I think it's very wrong to involve you in all this ugliness. Why are you talking to them? Fate's hands had shifted to the equally unhelpful position of resting on his hip. I'm making friends. You wouldn't know anything about that. I crawled closer and closer, waiting for them to decide to attack me. They buzzed by my head. A few landed briefly on my hands and arms, but no one stung me yet. I made my way to the hive and perched next to it. This was it. I knew what I thought I should do, but this could go bad quickly. So far, the bees had left me alone, but once I yanked the hive loose, I imagined I'd get their wings in a bunch. I looked around, knowing I'd taken a while. No one was in the parking lot or seemed to notice me at all from a huge window that had clear sight. We don't have all day. Wow, I really didn't like him, but he did have a point. Both shaking hands out, I grabbed the hive and turned my head away. My eyes squinted shut and I yanked it loose. No stinging. I opened an eye, the tiniest slit. It was idiotic, really. Seeing the bees or not wouldn't change their mind about attacking me. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to fully look at the mass swarm that was surely about to vent their anger. When I did look, I saw the bees were still calm. Huh? Come on! Fate screamed from underneath. I looked at his handsome face and I swung a leg, eyeing the distance between my foot and his head. Nope, not close enough. I guess he gets to keep his straight nose today. I tucked the hive under one arm, expecting a full-on attack at any moment, and shimmered down awkwardly, with only one free arm. Can you take it? I asked, trying to hand him the hive so I could make the final jump down. He stood back, arms crossed. Can't touch it. Not even for a minute? Not my choice. Right now, even if someone were to walk out here right by this spot, they might notice me, but they wouldn't see you. If I touch that, which is part of your job, all bets are off. You stay assignment and you're shielded. It's when you step out of boundaries that it can go badly. I huffed a bit and then looked at the hive. I apologized for the joke ahead of time. I jumped the 5 feet or so down and managed to hang onto it. I froze there in a squat as I waited for the mass swarm that would finally decide it was time to let me know they weren't happy about their relocation. You getting up? I looked under my arm where I had tucked it. The bees that were flying around followed me, but none of them seemed overly upset, even after the jump. I stood slowly, not wanting to rock the hive. The Marks convertible was sitting right under where the bees' previously home had been. I can see an image as clear as a photograph in my mind of the hive sitting in his back seat. My hands froze as I lifted the hive to put it exactly how I envisioned it, and I froze. What exactly would this lead to? Not many people actually die from bee stings. It just sucks. Do it. Shut up. I didn't bother looking at Fate. I just stood there. Could I really do this? It was rare, but there was still the chance I could be murdered. I could be murdering this man. And then, like a jolt to the system, more images of the people he abused flashed through my head. An older couple with bare cabinets. I looked upward. I don't know who's running this show, but you made your point. He's got it coming. I placed the hive onto the floor of the back seat of the open convertible and stepped back. I looked over to Fate. Now what? We take a seat and watch the show. Make sure it goes smoothly. He walked over and looked at the hive, still calm. I don't know if you want to see it. You do the deed, you see it out. I blew out a long breath. I've never intentionally hurt someone, and no matter who this person was and what he done, I still prefer not to see it happen. No one likes this part. And just like that, a little glimmer of the person he could be showed through a bit. Was it just me? I knew he made me more agitated. Maybe something about me triggered him as well. He walked away without another word. I headed over to the bench in front of the strip mall after about 50 feet away. Fate found a spot about 30 feet down from me. I was glad for the distance. A minute later, when the sound of thunder rumbled, I was glad I was under the overhang. My Mark dashed out of the coffee shop just as the rain started. First thing he did was put the roof back up on his car. I looked upward. Nice touch. And then the Mark got into the car. It didn't take long for the screams to start. Even from where I sat, I could see the cloud of bees swarm up in the car. That's when I really started wondering what I'd done. I got a gut reaction to the pain I knew I inflicted. I leaped to my feet to go and help him, but fate got to me first and wrapped his hands around my forearms. You can't. What I can't do is this. Let go of me. I tried to pull free, but instead of making headway toward the car, I was being towed further away by fate. All I could do was watch. There was a big difference between wishing bad on someone who's done harm and inflicting it yourself. The magnitude of difference was hitting me hard right now. In theory, I could have hurt someone evil like this all day, every day. The reality was a lot harder. People heard the screams he was making even through the closed car and ran to help, but couldn't get the doors open. They banged on the window and screamed for him to unlock the door. Someone screamed for a knife to cut the canvas top, but by the time one arrived, who knew how many times he'd been stung? I couldn't break free of fate, but he stopped tugging me further away. So we stood there, arms outstretched in between us as we both watched the horror of what unfolded. Will he die? I asked. It takes 10 bee stings per pound to kill a human. I'd guess he was about 180 pounds. That hive probably had 45,000 bees. Yeah, I'd say he's dead. I just killed a man? It'll get easier. I hope not. He dropped his grip, but it didn't matter now. I could hear the sirens of the ambulance as he walked towards the Honda. The Good Samaritans had helped the man out of the car and laid him on the cement. His body didn't move. The stingers were so dense, patches of his arms appeared gray from a distance. I could hear the police talking as we passed. What a fluke. The hive must have dropped from that branch with the wind. Can you believe what just happened? I imagine the coverage on the news later today, talking about the crazy coincidence of a hive dropping and lying dormant in the back of a man's car until he got in it. A freak accident, they'll call it. It's what I would have thought a week ago. Now I knew better. And that's the end of chapter 6. See you in the next chapter.